The moment we pulled into Willow Creek Estates, Rachel and I thought we'd found paradise. Our real estate agent, Mark Thompson, had sold us on the dream with the enthusiasm of a motivational speaker. "This isn't just a neighborhood," he'd said, spreading his arms wide during our first tour. "This is a lifestyle." And what a lifestyle it was. The entrance alone was a masterpiece of suburban engineering. A grand archway, crafted from locally sourced limestone, meticulously trimmed hedges forming perfect geometric shapes, and a water feature that looked like it had been designed by a team of landscape architects with advanced degrees in aesthetic mathematics. Bronze letters spelled out Willow Creek Estates in a font so elegant it could have graced the cover of an architectural digest. I'm David Hartley, a 45-year-old software engineer who'd spent the last decade working for a Silicon Valley startup. Rachel, my wife, was a landscape architect with a portfolio that included some of the most prestigious public spaces in the state. We'd saved for years, endured countless startup pressures and design project deadlines, all with this moment in mind. Our perfect home in a perfect community. Our 2 kids, Emma, 12, and Jack, 9, were equally excited. Emma was already planning her Instagram posts about our new neighborhood, while Jack was thrilled about the community pool and the promise of making new friends. The houses were a beautiful mix of modern farmhouse and traditional craftsman styles, each one slightly different, but maintaining a harmonious aesthetic that seemed almost too good to be true. The first warning signs were subtle. During our initial walkthrough with the Homeowners Association Welcome Committee, I noticed the precise way everything was measured and monitored. Judith Weatherby, the HOA president, watched our every move like a drill sergeant inspecting new recruits. Her steel gray bob was perfectly coiffed, designer reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose, and a clipboard, which I would soon learn was her most treasured possession, clutched tightly in her hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley," she'd said, her voice a perfect blend of administrative authority and passive-aggressive charm. "We pride ourselves on maintaining the highest standards in Willow Creek Estates." At the time, I thought it was just professional pride. If only I'd recognized it for what it truly was, a warning. Our first month was a honeymoon period of suburban bliss. The neighbors seemed friendly, the community events were well organized, and everything looked pristine. But pristine, I would learn, came with a price tag far more expensive than our mortgage. 3 weeks after moving in, the first letter arrived, neatly typed, printed on what seemed like official letterhead. It informed me that the welcome mat I'd placed by our front door was 2 shades too beige and not in compliance with the neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. I'd laughed when I first read it, showing the letter to Rachel over our morning coffee. "They can't be serious," I'd said, chuckling. Rachel, ever the professional, had studied the letter with a more critical eye. "Look at the letterhead," she'd muttered. "This is meticulously prepared. They're absolutely serious." Little did we know this was just the beginning. The welcome mat was merely a preview of the bureaucratic nightmare that was about to unfold. A nightmare orchestrated by Judith Weatherby, the undisputed queen of Willow Creek Estates. A queen who was about to meet her match. The fines started small, but they were calculated to wound. A $50 citation for our trash can being 3 inches outside the designated storage area arrived precisely 2 weeks after the welcome mat incident. The documentation was impeccable. A time-stamped photograph, a detailed measurement report, and a breakdown of the violation code that referenced no fewer than 7 different sections of the HOA bylaws. Rachel was the first to truly recognize the depth of our problem. As a landscape architect, she understood urban design, community planning, and the delicate balance between aesthetic standards and personal expression. The wildflowers she carefully selected, native species that supported local pollinators and required minimal maintenance, became her first battlefield. "These aren't just random plants," she explained to me one evening, spreading out her design portfolio. "These are carefully curated to support local ecosystems. They're drought-resistant, they require minimal water, and they're perfectly suited to our local climate." The HOA saw it differently. The violation notice arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning, delivered by certified mail. $75 for unauthorized landscaping and vegetation non-compliance. The specific charges were mind-boggling in their specificity. Failure to maintain uniform ground cover, introduction of non-approved plant species, disruption of neighborhood visual harmony, potential reduction of property values due to non-standard landscaping. When Rachel tried to discuss the matter at the monthly HOA meeting, Judith Weatherby's response was nothing short of bureaucratic warfare. "Mrs. Hartley," she said, her voice a razor-sharp instrument of administrative precision, "rules are rules. Uniformity is what makes this community exceptional. Your personal preferences are secondary to the collective aesthetic." The meeting room was a testament to Judith's vision of perfection. Beige walls, perfectly aligned chairs, a color palette so neutral it seemed to suck the life out of the room. Around 24 homeowners sat in uncomfortable silence, most too intimidated to speak. Mike Rodriguez, our neighbor, leaned over and whispered, "Welcome to the HOA gauntlet. They've been like this for years." A Vietnam veteran and high school history teacher, Mike had his own battles with the HOA. His front yard was a monument to military precision, but apparently not precise enough for Judith's standards. He received multiple warnings about the height of his flagpole, the specific shade of his flag, and the exact placement of his military service flag. They cited me for having my flag at a 47-degree angle instead of 45, Mike had told me earlier. Can you believe that? The fines continued to accumulate. A $100 charge for excessive exterior lighting because Jack had placed a small solar-powered garden light near our walkway. Another $125 for unauthorized exterior decoration when Emma hung a wind chime on our front porch, a gift from her grandmother. Each violation came with a meticulously prepared document, photographs, measurements, cross-reference bylaws. It was less about maintaining community standards and more about a systematic campaign of bureaucratic harassment. Rachel began documenting everything. As a professional who dealt with complex design regulations, she understood the power of evidence. Spreadsheets, photographs, measurement comparisons. She approached our HOA problem like she would a complex landscape design, methodically, strategically, with an eye for every minute detail. "They want a paper trail?" she said one night, spreading documents across our kitchen table. "I'll give them a paper trail they'll never forget." I watched her, equal parts amused and impressed. My wife, normally so calm and collected, had transformed into a warrior, not with weapons, but with precise documentation, legal knowledge, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Little did we know, our first real battle was just beginning. Judith Weatherby had no idea what was coming. Summer arrived in Willow Creek Estates like a powder keg waiting to explode. The heat seemed to intensify the HOA's obsessive control, turning neighborhood management into a full-blown inquisition. Our first true moment of community solidarity came unexpectedly. It started with Lisa Chin, a retired software engineer living 2 doors down. Her teenage son, Alex, was preparing for a science fair project that required some outdoor experimentation. A small greenhouse, no larger than 4 square feet, appeared in her backyard. Within 48 hours, a violation notice arrived, citing unauthorized structural additions and potential neighborhood aesthetic disruption. Mike Rodriguez was the first to speak up at the emergency community meeting Lisa called. "This is getting ridiculous," he declared, his military bearing lending weight to every word. "They're stifling our children's creativity. My own daughter wants to start a butterfly garden for her environmental science project, but she's terrified of getting us fined." The meeting room buzzed with suppressed anger. What had once been individual frustrations were now becoming a collective grievance. Rachel brought her meticulously compiled documentation, a binder so thick it could have doubled as a weapon. Each page documented the HOA's increasingly absurd violations. Judith Weatherby's tactics had become more aggressive. A new set of bylaws appeared, so complex they seemed designed to trap homeowners in a web of bureaucratic nonsense. Some highlights included mandatory uniform mailbox colors. Only 3 shades of taupe were approved. Strict regulations on outdoor furniture. No more than 2 pieces allowed. Must be neutral colors. prohibition of any vehicle older than 10 years from being parked in driveways or on streets, maximum allowable height for garden decorations, 12 inches, no exceptions, specific guidelines for holiday decorations, including exact dates of installation and removal. The financial impact was devastating. Fines were no longer just annoying. They were becoming financially crippling. Mike showed us a spreadsheet of his accumulated HOA fines. Over the past 2 years, he paid nearly $7,500 in various infractions. They're targeting specific families, Rachel discovered during her investigation. A pattern emerged. Families with children, military veterans, anyone who didn't fit Judith's narrow definition of ideal residence seemed to receive more frequent and more expensive citations. Our next-door neighbor, Alina Rodriguez, Mike's wife, began gathering evidence. A court stenographer by profession, she had a talent for documentation that rivaled Rachel's. Together, they started mapping out the HOA's systematic harassment. The breaking point came during the community 4th of July celebration. Traditionally a time of unity, it became a battlefield of HOA enforcement. Judith and her board members patrolled the community park like military police, measuring everything from flag placement to the exact distance between picnic blankets. When Alex Chen attempted to set up a small science fair display showcasing local ecosystem research, Judith personally intervened. Unauthorized display, she declared, forcing the teenager to pack up his carefully prepared project. Something shifted in that moment. The parents who had been silently tolerating the HOA's tyranny suddenly found their voice. Lisa Chen, typically a reserved software engineer, stood up to Judith in front of the entire community. "My son is trying to learn," she said, her voice trembling with controlled rage. "He's studying environmental science, trying to make a difference. And you're more concerned about the aesthetic of a 2-square-foot display." The crowd murmured. Support grew. What had been individual frustrations were transforming into collective resistance. Mike Rodriguez circulated a petition. Rachel began researching local housing laws. Elena documented every interaction. Lisa started a private community chat group where homeowners could share their HOA violation stories. Judith Weatherby had no idea, but she just united the very community she thought she was controlling. And our fight was just beginning. August arrived like a pressure cooker of suburban tension. The HOA's latest assault went beyond anything we could have imagined. It started with a certified letter addressed to every homeowner in Willow Creek Estates. The contents were so outrageous that neighbors began gathering in each other's driveways, passing the document from hand to hand in disbelief. Effective immediately, the HOA was implementing a comprehensive community aesthetic and compliance program. The new regulations were nothing short of totalitarian. Homeowners would be required to submit monthly exterior property reports, complete with high-resolution photographs taken from specific angles. Any deviation would result in immediate fines. But the most shocking provision was buried in the fine print. The HOA now claimed the right to conduct surprise compliance inspections, with less than 24 hours' notice. Failure to provide immediate access would result in a $500 fine and potential liens against the property. Mike Rodriguez's daughter, Alina, who used a wheelchair, found herself at the center of the most egregious violation. The new bylaws included specific requirements about mobility equipment storage. Her custom wheelchair ramp, carefully designed to blend with their home's architecture, was suddenly deemed non-compliant. "They want me to store my daughter's wheelchair in a specific, hidden location," Mike told me, his voice barely containing his rage, as if her mobility device is something to be ashamed of. The financial threat became real when the HOA started sending increasingly aggressive collection notices. Lisa Chen received a letter threatening foreclosure proceedings over accumulated fines totaling $3,247, most of which were for minor, almost comical infractions. Rachel discovered the most insidious detail. The HOA had recently changed its bylaws, making it virtually impossible to challenge their decisions through traditional means. Any homeowner who wanted to contest a fine would need to pay a non-refundable review fee of $750, with no guarantee of resolution. They designed this system to crush us financially. Rachel explained one night, spreading out the documents on our kitchen table. Her normally calm demeanor had been replaced by a steely determination. It's not about maintaining community standards. It's about control. The breaking point came during a neighborhood block party, or what was supposed to be a block party. Judith Weatherby and her board members arrived with measuring tapes, clipboards, and a team of compliance officers who looked more like private security. They measured the distance between picnic tables. They checked the height of children's playground equipment. They took photographs of every single decoration, every piece of outdoor furniture. When Jack, my son, set up a small lemonade stand to raise money for his school's science club, Judith personally shut it down. Unauthorized commercial activity, she declared, her voice cutting through the summer heat. Violation of Section 7.3, Paragraph B of the HOA bylaws. A 12-year-old boy's attempt to raise $50 for his school, crushed by bureaucratic nonsense. The parents watched, a collective anger building. Mike's wife, Elena, was documenting everything on her phone. Lisa Chen was calculating the potential legal implications. Rachel was creating a comprehensive file of evidence. I felt a shift in that moment. We were no longer just fighting against an HOA. We were fighting for our basic rights as homeowners, as families, as human beings. This ends now, Rachel said quietly, her voice a dangerous whisper. I knew that look. As a software engineer, I'd seen her solve impossible coding challenges. As a landscape architect, she transformed impossible spaces into beautiful landscapes. Now she was about to wage war against the most tyrannical force in our lives. Judith Weatherby had no idea what was coming. Our fight was about to go nuclear. Knowledge, we discovered, was our most potent weapon. Rachel's methodical approach transformed our resistance from emotional outrage to strategic warfare. Her background in landscape architecture had taught her the importance of research, documentation, and precision, skills that would prove invaluable in our fight against the HOA. We began by reaching out to local legal resources. Elena Rodriguez's connections proved crucial. Her brother-in-law, Carlos, was a civil rights attorney who specialized in property law. Our first strategy meeting happened in Mike and Elena's living room, a war room of suburban rebellion. They're operating in a legal gray area, Carlos explained, spreading out a complex web of HOA bylaws, state housing regulations, and municipal codes. These bylaws are so restrictive they might actually be unconstitutional. Lisa Chen's technical skills became our intelligence-gathering operation. A former cybersecurity expert, she began meticulously combing through public records. What she discovered was shocking. The HOA's financial records didn't just raise red flags, they screamed of potential fraud, suspicious contract awards, inflated maintenance costs, and a network of business relationships that bordered on conflict of interest. Judith Weatherby and two other board members seemed to be steering contracts to companies they had personal stakes in. Look at this, Lisa said one evening, her laptop screen filled with spreadsheets and interconnected ownership documents. The landscaping company that gets most of the HOA contracts. It's partially owned by Judith's nephew. Mike Rodriguez's military investigation skills kicked in. He began collecting testimonies from other homeowners who had been systematically harassed. Some were too afraid to speak publicly, but they were willing to provide written statements. An elderly couple had been threatened with foreclosure over a $12 fine for a flower pot that was 2 inches too tall. A young family had received multiple citations for their child's autism support service dog. The patterns of harassment were becoming clear. Rachel's approach was multi-pronged. She contacted local media, specifically an investigative reporter named Jennifer Martinez, who had a reputation for exposing community corruption. Jennifer was intrigued by the comprehensive documentation we'd assembled. This isn't just about a strict HOA, Jennifer told us during our first meeting. This looks like systematic harassment with potential financial crimes. Our legal strategy took shape. Carlos identified several potential avenues. Challenging the HOA's bylaws as overly restrictive, investigating potential conflicts of interest, examining the legality of their fine and enforcement mechanisms, exploring potential civil rights violations. The local news became our unexpected ally. Jennifer's initial story about the HOA's restrictive policies went viral on local social media. Homeowners from other communities began reaching out with similar stories. A crowdfunding campaign was launched to support our legal fight. Within weeks, we'd raised over $50,000, a war chest to fight the HOA's bureaucratic tyranny. The most powerful moment came during a county commissioners meeting. Mike, in his dress military uniform, presented our compiled evidence. The room fell silent as he methodically outlined the HOA's systematic harassment. "This isn't about maintaining a community," Mike said, his voice steady and authoritative. "This is about power, about crushing the spirit of families who just want to live their lives." Judith Weatherby, who was present at the meeting, began to look nervous for the first time. Her clipboard, once a symbol of her absolute authority, now seemed like a prop in a failing performance. The fight was just beginning, but for the first time, we had hope. We weren't just homeowners anymore. We were a united community, ready to take a stand. And Judith Weatherby had no idea what was coming. Judith Weatherby's first mistake was believing she could control the narrative. The moment our investigation went public, the HOA board entered full damage control mode. Emergency meetings were called. Lawyers were consulted. But the cracks in their foundation were already spreading like spider webs. Internal communications began to leak. An anonymous source, later revealed to be a junior board member named Thomas Green, started forwarding email chains that painted a damning picture. These weren't just bureaucratic overreaches. They were calculated attempts to generate revenue through systematic harassment. One particularly explosive email from Judith to the HOA's legal counsel read, "We need to generate at least $75,000 in fines this quarter to offset our maintenance budget. Target the newer homeowners. They're less likely to fight back." The local news station, led by Jennifer Martinez, ran a week-long investigative series. Each day brought new revelations. Inflated contract prices for neighborhood maintenance, kickback schemes with local contractors, deliberately complex fine structures designed to maximize revenue, targeted harassment of homeowners who questioned the board's authority. Mike Rodriguez's military connections proved invaluable. A retired JAG officer he knew began reviewing the HOA's legal standing, discovering multiple violations of state housing regulations. The board's response was predictable and devastating. They began issuing even more aggressive fines, hoping to intimidate homeowners into silence. Lisa Chen received a $2,500 fine for continuous non-compliance, a catch-all charge that seemed designed to break her spirit. But Lisa was no ordinary homeowner. Her background in cybersecurity meant she was uniquely equipped to fight back. She began a comprehensive digital investigation, tracing the financial trails of the HOA board members. "It's not just about the money," Lisa explained during one of our strategy meetings. "It's about a systematic abuse of power." The first major crack in the HOA's armor came from an unexpected source. Thomas Green, the junior board member who had been leaking documents, came forward completely. During a county commissioners meeting, he testified under oath about the board's systematic misconduct. "We were told to generate revenue through fines," Thomas revealed, his voice shaking. "It wasn't about maintaining community standards. It was about creating a revenue stream." Judith Weatherby's response was telling. Instead of addressing the allegations, she attempted to discredit Thomas. She filed a defamation lawsuit, a move that would prove to be her fatal mistake. The lawsuit became the final nail in the HOA's coffin. It drew even more media attention, bringing in state-level investigative resources. The county prosecutor's office began a formal investigation into the HOA's financial practices. Community support exploded. Homeowners who had previously been too afraid to speak out now came forward with their stories. A support group formed, with daily meetings and a growing legal defense fund. Rachel's meticulously compiled documentation became crucial evidence. Her landscape architect's precision in documenting every interaction, every fine, every ridiculous regulation provided a comprehensive picture of the HOA's systematic harassment. The board began to fracture. Some members resigned. Others started cooperating with the investigation. Judith's control was slipping away, and she knew it. A particularly revealing moment came during a closed-door meeting that was partially recorded. Judith was heard saying, "We can't let these people win. This neighborhood is our kingdom." But kingdoms, we were learning, could fall. The state's Real Estate Commission got involved. Preliminary findings suggested multiple violations of housing regulations, potential financial fraud, and systematic harassment of homeowners. Judith Weatherby had spent years building her kingdom. Now we were going to tear it down, brick by bureaucratic brick. The final battle was just beginning. The county commissioner's hearing room was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the back, the air thick with anticipation. This was more than just a local dispute. It had become a symbol of community resistance against bureaucratic tyranny. Jennifer Martinez from the local news network sat in the front row, her camera crew capturing every moment. Mike Rodriguez stood near the witness stand, his military dress uniform a stark reminder of the service he'd given to the country he was now defending in a different battlefield. The state's Real Estate Commission had assembled a comprehensive report that read like an indictment. Judith Weatherby and 3 other board members sat at the defendant's table, their previous air of invincibility replaced by a palpable sense of desperation. Lisa Chen's digital forensics had been the game changer. Spreadsheets, email chains, financial records, all meticulously documented and presented with the precision of a surgical strike. Her evidence revealed a systematic scheme of financial manipulation that went far beyond simple HOA mismanagement. Over the past 3 years, Lisa testified, her voice steady and clear, the HOA has generated $1.2 million in fines. 78% of these fines were issued for violations that were either fabricated or grossly exaggerated. The most damning evidence came from Thomas Green, the former board member who had turned whistleblower. His testimony exposed the internal culture of the HOA, a culture of fear, manipulation, and financial exploitation. "We were told to view homeowners as revenue sources," Thomas explained, his voice occasionally breaking. "It wasn't about maintaining community standards. It was about generating income through harassment." Rachel's comprehensive documentation provided the human element to the cold, hard facts. She presented a detailed timeline of harassment, showing how the HOA had systematically targeted specific families, the wheelchair ramp for Mike's daughter, the science fair project shut down, the children's chalk drawings erased. The turning point came unexpectedly. A retired judge who lived in the community stood up during the public comment section. "I've seen many cases of bureaucratic overreach," he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of judicial experience, "but I've never seen anything quite like this. This is not community management. This is institutional bullying." Judith Weatherby's final attempt at defense was as pathetic as it was revealing. She argued that the strict rules were necessary to maintain property values and preserve community standards. Mike Rodriguez's response was swift and devastating. "Community standards?" he said, his military training evident in every word. "A community is built on respect, on supporting each other. What you've created is a prison of petty regulations." The county commissioner's decision was unanimous and comprehensive. Dissolution of the current HOA board. Comprehensive financial audit. Requirement of new elections with strict oversight. Substantial fines for financial misconduct. Prohibition of board members from serving in any HOA capacity for 10 years. As the gavel came down, the room erupted in applause. Families hugged. Children cheered. The weight of years of oppression seemed to lift in an instant. Judith Weatherby was let out, her clipboard, once a symbol of her absolute power, now nothing more than a sad reminder of her fall from grace. Lisa leaned over to me and whispered, "Sometimes the system actually works." Rachel squeezed my hand. Our neighborhood had fought back. We had won more than just a legal battle. We had reclaimed our community. But the final chapter was yet to be written. 6 months after the hearing, Willow Creek Estates was unrecognizable. The new HOA board, elected through a transparent process with input from every homeowner, represented the true spirit of community. Mike Rodriguez served as president, with Lisa Chen as vice president. Rachel was appointed to the Architectural Review Committee, bringing her professional expertise and passion for inclusive design. Our first community project was a testament to everything we'd fought for. We transformed the unused common area into a multi-generational space that celebrated diversity and inclusion. A wheelchair-accessible playground sat next to a community garden. Native plant species supported local ecosystems. Solar-powered lighting illuminated pathways designed for everyone. Judith Weatherby's final act of petty revenge came unexpectedly. She filed a defamation lawsuit against the community, a last-ditch effort to maintain some semblance of control. But her lawsuit became her ultimate downfall. During the legal proceedings, more damning evidence emerged. Her property management company had been systematically overcharging HOAs across 3 counties. The lawsuit, meant to be her revenge, became the final nail in her professional coffin. The State Attorney General's office launched a broader investigation into HOA management practices. Our fight had become a catalyst for change, inspiring homeowners and other communities to stand up against bureaucratic tyranny. Thomas Green, the whistleblower who had initially leaked documents, found redemption. He was hired as a consultant, helping other communities develop fair and transparent HOA governance models. His testimony had been crucial in exposing the systemic corruption. Our neighborhood became a model of what community could be. The new bylaws were clear, fair, and written with input from every homeowner. Annual meetings became true discussions, not dictatorial declarations. Every voice mattered. For the Rodriguez family, the victory was deeply personal. Mike's daughter, Alina, started a nonprofit focused on accessibility and community design. Her experience had transformed a painful struggle into a mission of empowerment. Lisa Chen developed a digital platform that allowed homeowners to track HOA finances, communicate transparently, and understand their rights. What had begun as a personal fight became a tool for community empowerment across the state. The financial settlement was significant. The dissolved HOA board was required to repay over $500,000 in improperly collected fines. Each affected homeowner received compensation, with additional funds directed toward community improvements. But the real victory wasn't monetary. It was the restoration of community spirit. Our neighborhood cookouts became legendary. Families that had once been divided by fear now shared meals, supported each other, celebrated milestones together. The children who had been silenced now led community projects. Alex Chen's science fair displays were no longer seen as violations, but as opportunities for learning. Judith Weatherby's professional reputation was destroyed. Her property management license was revoked. The companies she'd been involved with faced significant legal scrutiny. Her kingdom had crumbled, replaced by a true community. During the final hearing, the judge's words resonated with everyone present. A community is not built through fear and control, but through respect, understanding, and collective support. As I watched my children play in the new community space, Rachel's hand in mine, I realized we'd done more than fight an HOA. We'd redefined what it meant to be a neighborhood. Mike Rodriguez approached, a smile breaking across his weathered face. "We did it," he said simply. And we had, not through violence or extreme measures, but through persistence, documentation, and an unwavering belief in justice. Willow Creek Estates was no longer just an address. It was a community, our community.